During the week of the 4th of July, several people saw a strange flying object crash in a deserted area near the city. First to reach the crash site was Mac Brazel, a rancher who lived and worked nearby. Brazel collected some of the debris but was unable to figure out what it was, so he decided to bring it to the town's sheriff, George Wilcox. The sheriff was just as surprised by this material he had never seen and called the nearby military base. The intelligence officer in charge at the time was Major Jesse Marcel. Marcel went to the crash site and collected a few more pieces of debris. On his way back to the base, he stopped by his home to show them to his son, Jesse Jr.
He came back real late one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, as I recall, very excited because he woke myself, my mother up saying they found parts of a UFO or a flying saucer at that time. And he wanted me to see it because it was such of an unusual type of finding.
Another person who saw some of these fragments is Frankie Rowe, the daughter of a local fireman who at the time was 11 years old.
When I would wad it up, it was like I had nothing in my hand. I couldn't feel it touching my skin. It was real weird. You'd drop it on the table and it was just like water, the way it would spread out.
On the very evening of the finding, the base commander, Butch Blanchard, announced to the press that the remains of a crashed flying disc had been recovered. The next day, the news was all over America.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
But in 24 hours, everything was to change dramatically. Jesse Marcel was summoned to the military base of Fort Worth, Texas, which was under the command of General Remy. Here Remy called a press conference in which Jesse Marcel was forced to present some debris from a weather balloon instead of the material he had found in the desert near Roswell. The newspapers immediately published their retraction, and the news of the flying disc was officially considered dead. This is what Jesse Marcel Jr. had to say about this episode.
A photograph of the debris that was seen in General Ramey's office at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas. This is my father holding up what is very obviously parts of radar target with balloon debris. Emphasize this is not what was seen on the floor of our kitchen that evening or that late early morning hours in 1947. This is totally different.
Further in life, Jesse Marcel would confess to his son that it had been in fact a cover-up from the military. Marcel told his son that he had been ordered to present the debris from the weather balloon and was told to never talk again about what he had seen in Roswell.
My dad explained to my mother that this was a non-event. Don't even discuss it with your friends. He didn't want me to talk about it, so we did not talk about it.
There were just fragments strewn all over the area, an area about 3/4 of a mile long and several hundred feet wide. One thing I was certain of, being familiar with all our activities, that it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else, which we didn't know what it was.
Despite the official denial, people in Roswell were already convinced it had been a flying saucer. The local journalists were receiving requests for information from all over the world, and they kept telling everybody that the crashed object was not of terrestrial origin.
There was a tremendous amount of excitement because here I am, a little country editor in a small city in New Mexico, talking to Paris and Rome and London and Tokyo, and I can't remember all of them.
At that point, Roswell was hit by a wave of threats from the military authorities, directed against anyone who appeared to have some information about the incident. Frank Joyce had been among the first to break the news over the local radio station.
There was a young lady on the line saying, "Colonel so-and-so, this is the Pentagon calling." And the voice on the line says, "Did you put that story on the air about the flying saucers?" And I mean, his voice was, the type that really conveys menace and power. And I said, "Yes, I did." And he says, you're going to get in a lot of trouble for this, or made some threatening comment. And I said, look, I'm a civilian. You can't tell me what to do in stories I put on the air. And he says, I'll show you what I can do. And bang, hung up the phone.
Soon after, the owner of the radio station for which Joyce worked received a phone call from Washington.
I got a call from Washington saying, look, if you put out any stories on this thing, you're going to lose your license. It's not going to be over a period of time. It's going to be the same day that we tell you that you're off the air.
Also, Frankie Rowe's family received an unpleasant visit from a military who did not identify himself.
He had this club, or stick, or whatever it was, and he was beating it on his hand. And he would hit it. Every time he would say something, he'd hit his hand. And he said, I want you to know you were never there. And I didn't understand what he meant, because I said, yes, I was. And he said, no, you weren't. I said, yes, I was. And he said, can't you get this through your head? You never saw anything. You were not there. You don't know anything. And he said, this is a big desert out here. We can just take you out in the middle of this desert and no one will ever find your bodies. He said, you'll be nothing but bones and nobody will ever know what happened to you.
Despite the efforts to cover everything up, the rumor of the flying saucer kept circulating all over the place. The military then changed the official version for the second time, and they said the object was a secret weapon composed by a weather balloon and a disc-shaped flying machine. But it was too late, and the flying saucer fever was already spreading across America. It is interesting to note that Roswell's Air Force Base housed the very planes that had dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki only 2 years before.